What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on the GTO, and if you had seen last video, we installed a flex fuel sensor on this thing to start getting it ready for E85. And in that video, I had mentioned that we had just about everything that we needed to add a second pump to our custom basket that we made in the tank. So that's what we're going to be working on today. If you guys want to see how we made that custom basket that we're going to be modifying today, or any other part of our fuel system, you can go back on the channel and check it out. There are 4 fuel system videos covering everything that we've done to build this fuel system. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Alright, so now that we've gotten through the intro, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're working with. So I've got some parts laid out here on the bench, and we're going to recycle a few things here from previous projects. So we've got a 4 psi Hobbs switch that we're going to be using from another project. Then we've got a new DYNO Hotwire kit for the new pump. I also picked up a bulkhead fitting on eBay. I've used these in the past and they have worked out really well. Nice, easy budget option. I will link them if they are still selling them. Then we've got a new pump install kit from Quantum here for a WALBRO pump. And I also picked up a 3/8 or 10mm Y from them as well. Then we've got 2 WALBRO 450s from the HELLCAT. When we upgraded the fuel system on that, these pumps were still good, so we're going to pick one of these to use today and put a new sock on it and run it. Then we've got some miscellaneous different length fuel hoses here so that we can get everything plumbed up nice and neat inside the tank. So now that we've gone over the parts that we're going to use today, let's go take a look at the car and see where we want to start. So first things first is we need to get access to our tank, and in order for us to do that, we need to drain and disconnect our meth system, disconnect our feed and return line, get our battery and battery box out of the way, and then this brace so that we can slide the tank back. I'm going to drain the tank, and then we can start drilling the hole for the bulkhead and get our basket out so that we can modify it and be able to add our second pump. So let's start getting all this stuff disconnected and get that tank drained. Glad we did these quick disconnects on our meth system. Try to pop that out, cover it with my finger. Disconnect it from our pump as well. Also got to disconnect our methanol level sensor. Then we'll have to disconnect our pump. These straps right out of the way for now. So what I'm going to do now is just start disconnecting this hat because it has to come out anyways. Then we'll tap this ring off of there that retains it into the tank, and we'll feed our hose right down in from the top, and we'll definitely be able to get some fuel that way. So let's start getting this thing siphoned out. Here we go, guys. It actually worked. It started the siphon. You guys probably can't see down in there, but that hose is flowing good. So we're just gonna let this thing go ahead and pull as much fuel out as we can this way. Try to get it lightened up so we can pull it back. I do have a normal pump, but I couldn't get it in there with how it's sitting. So let's get as much out as we can, and then we'll slide this tank back and get the rest out. Alright, first thing we're going to do is start disassembling this thing. Got our fuel level sensor disconnected. Be careful with the arm and everything for the fuel level sensor. Then you're going to want to pop each one of these clips out as you slide the bucket down. You can use little pieces of thin cardboard or thick paper to hold each one as you go to the next one, so they don't keep locking in on you. Then it'll just slide apart like so, and you will have your lower basket. Now this is part of what we modified the first time, so if you haven't seen the first video, go back and check it out. But we modified all of this, and we also modified quite a bit of this centerpiece here to make our WALBRO 525 fit right here. So this is our current 525 that we've been running, but we're going to try to add one of these 450s here. Haven't 100% sure decided where we're going to put it yet, but that's what we're working on right now. So I'm going to come up with a game plan, and then I'll show you guys what I decide on. So the plan is I'm going to go ahead and start lopping these pieces off that are protruding out the side, because I'd like to take the WALBRO 450 that we're going to use and tuck it right in there. If you guys can see, there's a ledge right here, so I'd like to tuck it right in there, and then we might have to notch a section out this way for the wider section of the pump to sit in, which I wouldn't mind doing because it'll keep the pump from moving up or down. So we're going to start off just by getting rid of this stuff, and then we'll smooth that out. We're going to use the Dremel just like we did when we first made this basket, and then we'll just keep working it from there until we have the pump somewhere that we're happy with. So we're just test fitting our new pump here just quickly, and then I'll clean it off and we'll make sure we can get it in the tank and everything. The biggest problem with this setup is probably going to be I'll have to loosen this hose clamp, get everything in the tank, and then slide the pump into place, just because of the fact that I don't think we're going to be able to get it through the opening in the top of the tank with the pump mounted on here. But we're definitely going to try it. So we'll see what happens here in a little bit. But as of right now, I think it's fitting pretty good. It's definitely not going to move anywhere. And since we cut that notch out for this to sit in, it can't go up or down at all. And it's not even trying to turn or anything. So I'm pretty happy with how that's sitting. We're going to go ahead, let's clean this thing off real good, and then we'll bring it over to the tank and just see if it's going to fit in the opening. Alright, so now that we've got the pump mounting figured out, it's time to start working on getting the bulkhead fitting mounted in the tank. So if we take a look at how we did the other one, I think we're going to go ahead and do it very similar. You can see we've got the bulkhead for the drive pump that comes through right here, and I think we're going to place this one right over here next to it. I think we're going to just use a little bit of grease on the drill bit as we drill right here, and I'm going to hold the vacuum right under here to catch any pieces of metal that might get by us. So that's what we're going to go for. If there is a bunch of metal in the bottom of the tank, more so after we do this, then I will pump the rest of the fuel out, let it dry, and then vacuum it. But I think we're going to be just fine. So let's get a drill bit and start getting this thing mounted in. Alright guys, so now I'm going to start making the harness that we're going to splice into this once we have this fully mounted in the tank. So I've got a plug here, It's a connector that's gonna plug right into the connector that's already on the WALBRO pumps. So I'm gonna use some 14 gauge wire. This is what we've been using for the 525 and it's been fine. I like to leave them extra long for now till we get it in the tank and have everything where we want it to be. We can cut it down and finish splice it once it's in there. So we're just gonna cut 2 pieces about the same length here. Alright, now we've got the wire that we're going to be working with. Alright, so now that we've got our wire cut, we can take these little rubber plugs that come with the connector kit, and I like to slide them on the wire now. Now I'm going to go ahead and strip a little bit of the wire back. Slide the wire into our little metal terminals that are going to go into our connector. And then they have a crimper for this, but I'm just going to use some needle nose for now. Make sure that's crimped nice and good. And then take the other bigger tabs here and I crimp those onto the insulation of the wire to make sure that it can't slide out, and then it holds it nice. Make sure you got those on nice. Do the same thing to this ground wire. Before we put these terminals into our new plug here, you want to make sure you're putting them on the right size. So I've got a spare pump here just to show you what I mean. So I'm just going to set mine like this, and we can see that our positive needs to go on this side. So that's what we're going to do. We'll take our positive and put it on that side there, making sure that you get that little lock-in pin on the terminal in the correct place, and then you just push it in and you will feel it clip in. You'll hear a little snap almost, and then we can go ahead and take our ground and do the same thing. Heard that one click in as well. Now we can slide these little rubber stoppers down, then we'll take our clip that's going to lock all this in place. Push it down until it clips, and now we've got ourselves a nice sealed connector here. And now this is good to go to the tank. So we can go ahead, get our bulkhead fitting mounted in, and then we will splice the in-tank side right here. I'm going to hard splice those to our wires that go to this connector as a permanent connection. Not going to be able to show you guys that because it is in the tank, but we're just going to use a couple heat shrink connectors on these wires here to connect to our bulkhead, and we will be good to go. So let's head back over to the car. Alright guys, so I had to take the pump off of our basket so that we can feed it down into the tank. So we're going to get the basket in there, and then I will get the pump slid into place once it's in the tank. Not sure how much I'm going to be able to show you guys because you can't really see it anyways, but take my word for it. It's one of the less fun parts of this. Biggest thing is you don't want to bend the arm on the fuel level sensor, the pickup there. Alright, so we got that in. This is going to be the fun part. Now I've just got to tighten the hose clamp on the pump. Alright, so now that's in there, we're going to take and start connecting what we need to. Let's go ahead and get that bulkhead fitting over here, get that installed. We can run that to our pump, get it hard spliced in the tank, and then we can start putting our basket back together. We've got our bulkhead in there. I'm not going to bother showing you guys me splicing them together because it's going to be tight and you're not going to be able to see anything anyway. So let me get those spliced together, and then we will be just about ready to start setting the rest of our hanger in here. Alright guys, now we're going to take our hat and the rest of our hanger assembly here and start setting it down into place. Now don't forget, this is going to have to clip in to the rest of our basket that we already have in there. I did go ahead and get the other end of this bulkhead hardwired to the other pump. And we've got to get all these lines and hoses hooked up. Our evap line has got to get hooked up. Listening for those clicks to make sure that basket clips on. Got to finish getting the feed line, the Y. I've got to hook that up to this pump so that it's hooked up to both pumps, and then to this feed so that both pumps are feeding it. I didn't mention before, but make sure whatever pumps you're using have a check valve in them so that when one's on, it's not just back feeding through the other pump. Should have mentioned that earlier, but I just thought about it. Mine do have check valves. We can hook up our evap line here. Now we've got to grab the ring that locks the hat down. So now that we've got this together and this, the only thing left to do here is splice it together with the wires coming from our relay, but we're gonna wait to put anything on this till we get our relay hooked up. So we can pause here with the tank for now, and let's go get our Hotwire kit opened up and start getting that mounted where we want it, and then we'll start wiring it from there. Alright guys, so since we're done working inside the tank, now we can start working on the external wiring. So this is a Hotwire kit from DYNO. This is the same one that we used for our primary pump, and it worked out phenomenal, so we're going to use one again. This is how they say to wire it in their directions, and this is how we wired our primary pump. But for the secondary, since we're going to be using a Hobbs switch, we're going to change it up just a little bit. Yellow is still going to be power to pump. Red is going to be power from battery to the relay. Then blue, I'm going to use a 12-volt switch source, so something that comes on with the ignition. And then for ground, instead of just grounding it to frame or battery like we did before, we're going to use the Hobbs switch to control the ground. So that's how we're going to control this relay off of the ground circuit. So that's the plan. So let's go ahead and start getting this thing mounted up, and we can start wiring it in. All right, I just wanted to give you guys a look at how we wired the primary pump, so if you haven't seen that video. So as you can see, we've got the relay mounted up there, and I think we're going to mount this new relay right next to it off to the left there. Sorry for the light, my GoPro light is broken, so we're using a flashlight here. Let me see if I can turn it down. So we're going to mount the new relay right off next to it there, and then do the same thing, loom it up nice and neat, run the power and ground for the pump up along there with those nice mounting clips so that it can go right to the pump. And then we've got power and ground and everything we need right over here with the battery being in the trunk. And then the only thing we'll need to tap into is a 12-volt switch source. So let's get the Hotwire kit and we can start wiring this thing up. That's not too bad. They're a little bit, one's a little lower than the other, which is annoying, but that'll work. All right, now let's get some wire and we'll start splicing stuff in and get some of that sheathing, the corrugated covering, and start wiring this thing up. So now that we've got the relay mounted, I want to work on getting the Hobbs switch ran, plumbed in, and wired up so that we can meet at the back at the relay and get that all nice and neat all at the same time. So for those of you that don't know what a Hobbs switch is, it's just a simple pressure switch. In our case, this one is 4 psi. You can get ones set for different pressures, and also you can get adjustable ones, but like I said, ours is set for 4 psi. So we've got to plumb this into a vacuum/boost source so that when the engine is seeing over 4 psi, this switch will close, sending ground to our relay, which will let it activate so that we can get the power through the relay to our pump. There won't be any actual like heavy power going through this thing. It's just going to trigger the relay so all the power can run through that. So let's head over to the car and see where we want to mount this. So as you guys can see, we've got a nice UPR vacuum manifold or vacuum block right there. But the problem is I wasn't planning for this manifold when I originally installed it there. This one's quite a bit taller than the LS3 manifold I was going to run. And with this here, it would actually be hitting the manifold. So that kind of sucks. But we've already got some lines coming off of it, and I've got a 3-way split. So we're going to go ahead and connect to this line down under here with our pressure switch, and then we'll tuck it up nice and neat out of the way back here. Then we will run both wires together over to about here. Then one will split off and go down the same route that we used for the flexfuel wiring in the last video. We'll run it down underneath the car all the way to the trunk where it will meet the relay. And then this other wire will come right up to here. You can see the lugs that we have. We've got a power lug right there and a ground lug right there that we use for power distribution in the front of the car. So I'm gonna run the other one directly to that ground so that we have a nice clean connection. So let's start getting this thing plumbed in and wired up. So you can see where we fed that wire down through with those big battery cables through the grommet in the floor. Ran it all up underneath the car, same exact way as we did the flex fuel sensor in the last video. Then we've got it coming up the back of the firewall the same way, across the back wall over here, and then it comes out right here. Now we've just got to go ahead and throw an end on that quick. We can throw it on the sensor, and then we're going to tuck everything up behind the wiring harness right there. As you can see, the trunk is starting to look like a mess, but it's because we've got a whole bunch of new wires here. So we're just going to take them one wire at a time, figure out where we need to go with them and get them made, and then we will put them all together and run them nice and neat like we did in the sheathing here. We've got our hot wire ran to the relay. We've got our ground going to our Hobbs switch. Now we need to mess with the blue wire and the yellow wire. We're going to go with the yellow one next, and this one is going to be the hot wire feed to the pump. So I'm just going to cut this guy back a little bit, splice in some more power wire, and then we'll get this guy routed over to the pump. So now that we've got the yellow hot wire set up to run to the pump, we've got everything else hooked up. The blue wire, you can hook up to any 12-volt source that comes on with the key. I ended up using my methanol hot wire just because I already have that wired in to come on with the key. So we tap that directly into that. So that one's good to go. So now everything else is wired up. The only thing left to do is connect everything. So that needs to go to power. We've got the wire that needs to go to ground. And then we've already got our Hobbs switch wired up. So now we can start cleaning this all up, taping it. We're going to use some 1/2-inch loom just to try to make it look nice and neat like this relay next to it. And then we will run everything off and run over to the pump and wrap this thing up. So let's start getting this thing cleaned up and get rid of some of this spaghetti. Alright guys, so we got that new hot wire kit installed. Pretty happy with the relay location and happy with the wiring. Everything else that's left there visible will get hidden by the battery box and the fuel tank brace. We got the new pump wired into that bulkhead fitting and all set to go with the hot wire kit. So this thing is pretty much ready to rip. We are going to leave the brace and the fuel tank and meth system disconnected for now because we do have another project coming up where we're going to have to pull all that stuff out anyways. So we're just going to leave it apart like this for now. Hopefully today's video could help you guys out in some way, shape, or form. As always, I appreciate you for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell, and we will catch you on the next one.